This podcast is brought to you by Tethered, the makers of the most badass saddle gear that you are able to find. The most frequently asked question that I get since I started saddle hunting is really about comfort. And aside from it being more comfortable to hike in because it's lighter, it's more compact, it's more mobile. Aside from that, the question is always kind of around whether or not I'm comfortable in the tree. And the saddle is extremely comfortable. And what makes it so comfortable is that it's absolutely customizable to fit each person differently. And you don't need to necessarily be a DIY guru to customize the saddle. Simple things like adjusting your tether height in many cases will get you dialed in and kind of provide you that the comfort that you're looking for in the tree. For me, the game changer ultimately was in terms of comfort was using the Mantis recliner. And if you don't know what the Mantis recliner is, this is a back band that goes around your back. And now they have a Gen 2 version that hooks right into your carabiner. And what it does is it provides you extra support in your back for those long all-day sits in November. This piece is extremely adjustable. And you might be asking, will this interfere with my shot whenever I'm drawing my bow? And it absolutely does not. The way it's kind of positioned and the way it fits on you, whenever you go to take a shot, when you lean up, it falls to your lower back and kind of gets out of the way of your shot sequence. So you can learn more about Tethered and all their gear at tetherednation.com, and be sure to check out their YouTube channel for a few great DIY saddle tips. One of my favorite parts about hunting season is starting my morning with a cup of coffee, and what better coffee to start your morning with for a hunt than Skull Brew Coffee. Skull Brew Coffee Company donates 10% of their profits back to nonprofit conservation to make sure that we keep wild places wild and that we keep public lands access still accessible for all of us to enjoy. So if you dig coffee and conservation, visit skullbrewcoffee.com and pick up some coffee today and pledge your support of conservation. Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 138. Today, John and I lay out our plans, goals, and aspirations for our 2019 hunts. So stay tuned. All right. What is going on out there? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are doing well. It is here finally, at least for me. For a bunch of you, it's probably already been here, but I am super pumped that this Saturday is the opener of our archery season here in Eastern PA. So super stoked for that. I was fortunate to get out actually this past weekend. A buddy of mine hit me up with a farmer actually had some predation tags, or some what they're referred to in Pennsylvania as red tags, and hit me up and said, "Hey man, what are you doing tonight? You want to go get in a tree?" And I said, "No, I don't like to bow hunt. So I'd appreciate it if you'd leave me alone." No, I'm just kidding. So I said, "Hell yeah, let's do it." So more than anything, it was really more of an opportunity to go out and get some live action. It's you can practice all you want getting into a tree and setting your stuff up, but the first time it's kind of a disaster. At least for me it is. I don't know for anybody else, but it's like I always forget stuff on the first hunt. Last year, I think on the first hunt I left my release at home. This time like Saturday was the day I was preparing all my stuff for this coming Saturday, where I was getting, my camo had all been, washed, descented, dried in its scent-free tote, and my bag was, and all that stuff. And now it was more about getting all the things that had been kind of spread out, like my rangefinder, which was, with my like shooting equipment, that I was using throughout the off season, and just my camera gear because I'm filming this year, the whole season, God willing, as long as I can tolerate it. So I had all that stuff to kind of accumulate and get together. Charge all my batteries for, my cameras, an Ozonics machine, on the hunts that I would take it, where it was needed or where I felt like it was going to be helpful. So all that stuff was what I was planning to do this past Saturday. And then my buddy Wilson hit me up and said, "Hey, we got some red tags if you'd like to go try to fill one with me." And so I had to kind of rush around and get all my stuff ready. And, of course I had forgot things, and I had to turn around like 2 times to pick stuff up that I jumped in a truck and left. And as I'm driving, I'm like going through my mental checklist of like, at least I was like, I wanted to just at least get the bare necessities. Like, it's just, do I have my release? Do I have arrows? And I was like, man, it's like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Forgetting Predator platform. So I had to turn around, get my platform, left again, driving down the road, going through my mental checklist again. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm forgetting something. And then I realized that my rangefinder was still in my quiver for target shooting. So I had to turn around and get that. So needless to say, there were a few kinks in the system, which is nice to get it out of the way. But just being able to climb into a tree, it was a cool kind of setup. I don't get to hunt many bean fields and stuff like that. But this, of course, as you're looking to, control some does on a particular farm, we were set up on a bean field, which was cool. And saw a bunch of deer, which was rad. Yeah, had one. Well, actually, we saw, I think it was 3 or 4 bucks. I saw 3. Wilson saw 4 because he saw one as I was climbing out. The last one that came out right at last light was a pretty nice deer. This may be a property we get to hunt during the regular archery season, but even if so, I'm not sure how much time I would spend on it just because I don't know much about it. I have deer in other places that I'd probably focus on unless I was getting completely skunked in those places, then I might throw a few Hail Marys at this farm if we're allowed to. But that was kind of the setup, man. The bummer is that, I got all set up, camera gear set, ready to roll. Got some footage of some does kind of, browsing. Nothing came within, shooting range of us. I think, the does were popping out in this one little area. It was probably about 80 yards away from us. But we did have one of the bucks. It was just the youngster. He's like a 6-point. Probably 1.5-year old deer, cruised up, snuck up on us, and just kind of followed and sat up right underneath my tree. And I filmed him. What I thought I was doing was filming him for like a good solid 8 minutes. And I was super stoked because it was my first, hunt with my new camera setup and stuff like that, and was getting this footage of this buck super close, like watching him licking and checking the wind and all that stuff. And got home to check the footage, and I was so excited whenever that buck came in. He kind of caught me off guard that, don't you know, I forgot to hit the record button. But I filmed the shit out of him for like 8 minutes, but with no film. So that was kind of a bummer. But the silver lining to me was, and I was talking about this with my buddy Chad from Exodus. We were talking last week and talking about having multiple spots, because you guys have heard me talk about in the past. I really hit the ground running this past spring. Got a bunch of new parcels to hunt this year, a bunch of different pieces of public land and stuff. And I have some that you've probably heard me refer to, and you guys probably refer to it this similarly, or maybe just with different vernacular. But I have a piece or two that's close to the house that I would refer to as like a burner property. Which, when saying that, means is that I don't really have any bucks there that I'm looking to hunt. There's no mature deer that I've seen on camera. Maybe something shows up in a rut, who knows? But I won't be here for the rut, so it's really just October. And what I use those for is to go hunt days where where the weather conditions aren't great, or I don't have the right wind to go hunt one of my other properties that, I know that I have a good deer on that I would like, or, a handful of good deer that I would like to try to hunt and kill. And the benefit to that is, one, like, you get to get out into the timber, which is like the obvious, right? You get to get out and spend some time outdoors, which is killer. But the other part of it that we were kind of talking about was, a lot of times when you hear tactics or strategies or whatever the case is on podcasts like this or any other number of podcasts, a lot of times we know the information, right? And I had this conversation with Greg Litzinger off air where I was like, I feel like, in the past, like, handful of years, like, I've been able to make a little bit of a jump. And I think he and I even talked about this on a previous podcast, that I feel like I've been able to make a little bit of a jump as far as, I'm having better sightings. I've started hunting, I know we talked about this. I started hunting more specifically terrain features versus specific deer, which has put me in position to see more mature deer more frequently and have better encounters just in general. Which is, me taking a lot of the stuff that I've learned over the past couple of years of doing this podcast, and that's really kind of helped me and put me in a good position, or a better position. And the thing that's still missing, though, and like the difference between, the guys who get it done year over year over year and the guys who see good deer but just are always just outside the opportunity, there's just like a 2% thing that happens that keeps you from releasing an arrow. And it's, you made a really, really small mistake, or you didn't think through this aspect of the hunt or whatever that played out. And what that comes from is really just seat time. And that was the one thing Greg and I talked about, was that, there's a lot of stuff that you've learned, and that, when we talk about things, it's like, I get the concepts and now I just need to see deer do them. And Chad and I were talking about this thing exactly, where a burner property gets you out to hunt. Yeah, that's the obvious benefit. But the other unintended benefit is that hopefully if it's in a decent spot, like you're seeing more deer. And so the more deer you see, the more deer behavior you see how they like to use a terrain feature. You see how their body language changes as they, maybe they approach another deer, and you can start to learn the difference between seeing a deer that's kind of the dominant deer or one that's, passive, and understand that how maybe calling or something like that might play into, how you're viewing a deer's body language. Just in setups, when you're setting up on a terrain feature, understanding, if you set up wrong once, and like how do you know that it's wrong unless you've done it wrong once, to kind of understand that, hey, this terrain feature, I probably need to set up on this side of it or in this way if the wind is doing X. So all those things are like, you can hear them and read them and talk about them until we're blue in the face. But a lot of times those things don't become concrete for at least me, because I'm very much a hands-on learner. Those things don't become concrete until I see them in action. And once I see them in action, then I'm like, okay, now I understand it. This is how I need to set up, or this is how I need to position my platform, when I'm in my saddle, or this is how my access needs to play out whenever I have this wind, or whatever the case is. But just the more opportunities you have to get into the stand, or into a tree, or into a blind for that matter, just to watch deer, we will all be learning something. And that was the cool thing about seeing that buck so close, because I was able to be on top of him for, 5-8 minutes, whatever it was. I put it on Instagram Live, which was like the last, like probably 45 seconds of him being in front of me. But it was just cool to watch him work the wind, do some nibbling, kind of check out his surroundings. He was working an edge down to us. And he had the wind in his favor the entire time, but it wasn't a direct wind. Like he was working a little bit of a crosswind, which was kind of cool to see. It's like he had no worries about his six whatsoever, because the crosswind was kind of blowing diagonally across his back. But he was really focused on what was in front of him and what was to the left of him, where he wasn't getting his wind. So that was kind of interesting to see, just kind of all that stuff play out. So that's a long-winded way of saying, anytime you can get into a tree and do some observation, be it a doe hunt, be it hunting for the deer that you're after, or whatever the case is time well spent. So with that, I'm going to bid you an adieu here, or a farewell here, and get this thing cracking, because I actually have to jump on a plane, headed to Alabama. So hey, y'all, to all my southern folks, I have some work to do down there in the beginning part of this week. So I'll be in Alabama the beginning part of the week, and then I'll actually be in New York City the second part of the week for work, and then booking it home to get ready for the season opener, and which I don't even know that I'm going to hunt the season opener, depending on the wind conditions. I may end up just going out and filming Wilson, because he's got a decent deer that he's tracked down, that the wind that we're going to get for Saturday's opener, particularly in the morning. And I know a lot of folks talk about not hunting mornings, but I think over time I've learned and am of the mind that if you have a deer that's on a pattern and you can get on him in the morning, and there's an opportunity, especially here in PA, this part of PA where you're still in September hunting, where you can probably still capitalize on that bed to food kind of movement, then it's worth a shot. And that's kind of, I think, what Wilson has going on, is that it's the right wind for this particular setup on this deer. And it'll be a morning hunt. He's been glassing him and seeing him in the mornings, headed back to bed late out of this bean field. So I think that we're probably going to try to set up on him. And all my spots for Saturday's opener, morning setups, there's one deer that I think I can kill in the morning, we'll see. But it's the complete wrong wind for that particular deer. I'll need a north wind, and think I'm going to get some west. So west is bad for me on pretty much every property. So I'm going to go ahead and skip probably the opener of carrying a bow and carry a camera instead, and see if we can't help Wilson get on a deer and put it on film. But with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the podcast. It's a cool show today. This is John and I's annual, goals, plans, aspirations, hopes, and dreams for our 2019 season. John, of course, had already been hitting the ground here. We'll talk about it a little bit, but he's been to Canada twice on a bear hunt and on a muley hunt. One was him hunting, one was him filming. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but we'll dive in certainly into what our plans are for this year and what we hope to accomplish. So for those of you that are hunting already, I'm jealous, but our time is fast approaching. For those of you who have yet to get into the woods, good luck to you as your openers approach. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I am joined, as I am many times, with my brother from another mother, Johnny, by God, Mulligan, Utah, hailing now from, I think you just became a resident of Canada most recently.
Sorry.
You've been north of the border quite a bit, dude. What's up with that? Are you thinking of, are you getting all Canadian on me or what? Did you start drinking Labatt Blue? That's the big question.
I did. And I switched my currency. I'm spending loonies and toonies. So, dude, I tell you, it's, I've spent 18 of the last 20 days in Canada. And then I go back on September 15th. I go back for another 4 or 5 days. So
to try to settle the score.
It's man, I'm telling you, it's a neat place. I had never been there before, and why not go like a lot?
Right.
You know,
why not just make it like a bi-weekly trip?
I know. Yeah. I mean, I got flagged when I went to, I drove to Ontario and then drove home and turned right around and then flew the next day to Northwest Alberta. And to me, it's funny. Like, I would think that you would go through immigrations, like when you're boarding the plane to fly into another country. But no, I flew from Chicago into Calgary. And then before I could get on my next plane from Calgary to Grand Prairie, then I had to go through immigration.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. It just seems strange. Like I'm already here. You know,
good thing you dropped off all those narcotics in Calgary before you jumped that next plane.
Exactly. You know, so like I get flagged, and so I'm sitting there looking at my watch, and I'm like, and I was already kind of cutting it kind of tight.
Right.
But so the guy flags me, he comes up, and he's like, all right, what's your purpose, in Canada? I'm like, photographer. And he's like, so what are you doing here? I'm like, taking photos. He's like, photos of what? I'm like, well, I hope a bunch of deer and mule deer, but I left my crystal ball back in Iowa. Like so that's what the goal is.
Right.
So he's like, okay. He's like, do you always travel with all your camera and lenses in your backpack? I'm like, yeah, so you all don't break them.
Right.
And he's like, okay. He's like, well, enjoy your stay in Canada. I'm like, thanks, man. Have a great day. And he hands me back this little piece of paper, and it says I am on it. And I'm like, I am. I don't know what that means or whatever,
Right.
So I go walk in, and I show him left, and I'm going to the right. So like I peel off to the left, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? And they're like, you got to go down that hallway and just have a seat in the waiting area, and somebody will be with you. And I'm like, uh-oh,
yeah,
what's going on? Yeah. So then I get grilled again, and they're like, well, who's paying you? I'm like, I'm getting paid from an American company, Ozonics. And they said, well, are they going to pay you in Canada? I'm like, no, they're paying me with U.S. money in the U.S. next week. And so what it all boiled down to is a work visa issue. They do not want lower 48 people coming up and making money in Canada and taking money and then bringing money back to the US,
right.
Like taking money out of their hands. So anyways, I'm like, no, it's on the up and up. And the guy's like, all right, man, you're good. And I'm like, no, actually I'm not. He's like, why is that? And I'm like, because I missed my flight. It departed 10 minutes ago. I've been in your waiting area for an hour and a half.
Jeez.
So because I get flagged by immigrations, they kick your bags out to baggage claim, which means I have to kind of go outside of the airport security, get my bags, and then rebook a flight.
Oh,
so then I ended up chilling in Calgary for like 6.5 hours, waiting on the next little bush plane to take me to Grand Prairie.
Dude, that sucks.
Yeah, but then after that, man, it was awesome. Once I got to my spot, it was super rad, and the locals are cool, and the Canadian folk are funny, and it's neat because being kind of semi-eastern Canada and then going far northwest, comparing the dialects and the phrases and the things that they say and stuff like that. But yeah, it was fun.
Nice. And so that was for your bear hunt, right?
No, no. So Alberta was
Oh, that's right.
the
Because you went the first time to for your bear hunt. This was the when you got flagged was for the most recent trip.
yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
Yep.
nice. So you did. So did you see some muleys?
I saw some giant mule deer. Unfortunately, it was in a zone that we did not have a tag for.
Oh,
So very interesting enough. There's things about Canada that I just didn't know. Um, as a non-resident, you can't hunt there unless you buy a tag through an outfitter or you get that hunter host program.
right,
But outside of that, you have to buy your tag via an outfitter. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an outfitted hunter, but he's the holder of the tags basically.
right.
And so, anyways, that was unique. And we did not have a tag in the zone in which this giant mule deer was standing 50 yards from us.
Oh man, how
Uh,
that's kind of a sick feeling, isn't it?
yeah, I mean he's like 195
Whew. Yeah,
mule deer. Yeah,
that's
he's yeah, he's a stud.
yeah,
I took a lot of photos of him. He's a stud, man.
nice.
So that was pretty cool. But we were, my guy that I was doing photos for, his hunt was for whitetail or wolf,
Hmm.
and or wolf. We didn't see any wolves, and we didn't have any shooter whitetails in bow range. So,
Did you see some decent whitetails at least?
yeah, I saw a couple, like on the way to where our zone was, and stuff like that. But
Right.
yeah, we just didn't have anything in range. It was real weird. Like the deer still had their velvet there, but they were already broke up. They weren't in bachelor groups anymore. They were all singles. They were on trail cameras, which most of the trail cameras were like 2, 3 in the morning,
Right.
but they were like posturing up on each other and
Hmm.
ears pinned back. It was super weird. I'm just, it was like, man, this is kind of early. This is
Right.
like middle, late September kind of activity, but
Right.
it was going on last week, August.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. I mean, and this is just I'm naive to this, but like, is there rut timing like similar to ours, or is it later or earlier, or what's the
I think it's pretty
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 close?
pretty close. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty close. I mean, I don't think. Again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it's closer to Midwest rut
Hmm.
than say the Midwest is different than the South, like
Right.
Florida. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah. That's interesting. And so you're headed back for a bear hunt because your first trip was for bear with a bow.
Yep, yep, yep. So I was in Ontario on a bear hunt. It rained every single day,
Nice.
and we had a full moon the first 3 days. Um, it, again, I don't know that affects so much, but it affected ours
Right.
because we were getting all nighttime photos. I passed, some 150, 175, 200-pound bears. And I'm not saying I was going out there to try to break the new Ontario record for
Right.
black bear with a bow. But just like with whitetails, I mean, I had an age class or a weight, in mind that I was going to try to go for. It was like that 275 to, 375 mark. I mean, that was
Right.
kind of the bear that I was after. Day 3, I ended up having about a 450 come in on me at like 12 yards, and he walked in broadside, and you can't ever hear him, so
Right.
like he's on me. I look up and he's there broadside at 12 yards, and I'm like, oh.
Right.
And so I grabbed the camera and get the camera on him, focused on him, and he came on into this bait barrel, and he proceeded to get in behind it, which no big deal. As big as he is, I could still shoot vitals if
Right.
he was broadside, but he wasn't. He was facing me like head on, and the only thing he was giving me was like a spine shot or a skull shot. And
Right.
so I drew on him, and I held draw for about a minute. Then I let down to adjust the camera because it was right at that time where considerably every 3 minutes you're losing light.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, like it's that moment where you're like, I wish I could freeze the time of the hunt.
Right.
Stop getting darker, please. Um, but it kept getting darker and darker, and then the temperature dropped so much. It was like 75, 85 during the day, and then it was dropping to like 40 at night. And when you have a drop like that in 2 hours, and it's just based on the sun going down, like my nose started running, and I ended up kind of giving a sniff,
Right.
and he heard it, and he popped his head up, and I'm like, you know what? If I sniff again, he might kind of bug out, and it might be enough to get him to stand up and turn broadside for me. And I tried that, and all he did was like a sit and spin. He just spun on his ass.
Right.
He's a pretty lazy fat bear, and just spun on his ass and just walked dead away. And as he's walking away, I'm like, "Hey bear, hey bear." I thought about going meh, but
Right.
yeah. But anyways, I was like, "Hey bear," and just all I was hoping for is for him just to stop for 1 second and just look over his shoulder, and I could have tried to slide one in, but nonetheless, he didn't give me a shot. And then the rest of the week, all I saw was small bears, and once you see a 450, I'm like, oh boy, I
Right.
want to. That's the one I want. And I got pretty stubborn, and I stuck to one site, and
Right.
kept hunting that one bear, and never saw him. And the guys out there are like, hey, be careful getting stuck on one bear, because those big bears, they might cycle in, come in, hit the bait, you know,
Then never
two
see
weeks.
him again. Right.
Yeah, and then maybe 2 weeks before he comes back through the area again. And but it made sense, because the rest of the week, all the smaller bears, when they would come in, they were like looking over their shoulder, like, man, is that big dude in town? Like, is he
Right.
gonna kick my ass?
Am I gonna get rolled on this bait pile here real quick?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna get covered in trail mix and grease. But
Right. Is that the first
um,
time you've ever bear hunted?
it is. It
Nice.
is. I tried to educate myself as much as I could, before. I mean, I've had an interest in it, but I didn't think it was feasible, or I just didn't think maybe opportunity would present itself, kind of situation. So it's like I have an interest in Corvettes, and I know a decent amount about Corvettes, but I don't know every spec, because I'll probably never own one.
Right.
And so, anyways, I once I knew that it was a reality, I started studying a lot more about black bears, and I feel like I gave myself pretty good base knowledge and of what to look for, what not to do, what to try, and whatnot. But so the hunt ended, and it was time to come home, because I had to get home to catch my flight to fly to Alberta. And the outfitter's like, dude, don't leave, just stay. I'm like, trust me, I wish I could, but I got to go make money. So
Right.
I came home, flew the next day to Alberta, and but on my way home, somewhere in like Minnesota, I ended up calling the outfitter and was just like, "Hey man, I had a really good time. Really appreciate you folks. Like my kidneys are, or my sides, my ribs are still, hurting from laughing so hard, and but probably my kidneys too
Right.
from
From the
recreational
obvious.
activities."
Right.
Yeah. But I said, "Hey, question, what's the chances on me coming back?" And they're like, well, F and A, they're like,
Nice.
you better come back. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, like, come back like soon.
Like
And
next
they're like, oh,
week.
like the spring. And I'm like, no, I was thinking a little sooner than that. And they were like, well, your tag's good till like, end of October or something like that. And
Right.
so I made a plan. I'm like, hey, September 15th, I'm going to come back. So they were all jacked to have me back. And
Nice.
yeah, so go back and see if we can get it done this time.
Nice, man. That's awesome, dude. It's man, what's crazy about bears, man? It's like, and I've never hunted bears with a bow. I've hunted them growing up as a kid with a gun. Got one. It was funny at a very early age. It was the first time I ever went bear hunting. My dad was like, trying to level set for me, like, hey, guys hunt all their life in PA may not see a bear in the woods, let alone shoot one. And it was
Yeah.
like the first half hour of the first time I ever went bear hunting in Pennsylvania and shot one. So
That's awesome.
which is kind of funny. Um,
I hate you.
yeah, which then, I never went again after that. Like for whatever reason, like bear hunting never really. My dad loves bear hunting. It was just never really appealed to me a lot. Now I have a more of a like infatuation with going to. Like I
Yeah.
really like to go. We've talked about this in the past, like bucket list hunts. Like I'd really like to go to Alaska, or somewhere
Oh,
where I could
yeah.
hunt grizzly, with a bow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think that would be super super rad. But the crazy thing is, man, it's because like I didn't really think about it at the time as I was a kid because I wasn't bow hunting. But man, shooting 3D and shooting at bear targets, dude, their vitals are like like they're different. than a
Oh
whitetail.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like
Yeah.
they sit a little higher up, but they sit a little bit more forward.
Yep.
You know, I'm assuming you probably did some anatomy study too before you went and
Yep.
shit like that, just to kind of get dialed in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what it comes down to is that shoulder is kind of jointed a little differently, and it's a little bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So because it's a little bit taller shoulder, it seems like you don't have kind of that little snake, dog leg,
Right.
Like a whitetail does. It's kind of shielded a little more. And again, that's why, people are always like broadside, 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 just
Right.
center punch, get both lungs, and you're good.
Right.
Just don't hit the shoulder. And, the only shot that bear gave me was one time he did pop his head up on his front legs. And as he was still sitting down, and because he was only 10 yards, I mean, the angle of my arrow would have entered right in the center of his chest and would have come out his bunghole,
Right. Yeah.
And so I showed the video to the owner of this joint, and he's like, "Why didn't you effing shoot him?"
Right.
I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, everybody says broadside, broadside. He's like, "You shot an antelope at 72 yards with a bow." He's like, "You smoked that." Well, I can't even do the conversation,
I love the
It's
fact
like-
that you're doing the accent though, too.
It's like beep, 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 beep,
Right. Right.
It's like, you silly Americans. He's like, shoot that. He's like, "Shoot that son of a gun right between the chest." He goes, "Right, that big blaze patch he had on his chest." And he goes, "He'll run it right at his ass." He's like, "He'll bleed out in like 10, 15 yards. We'll find him in the morning with the Argo." And he's like, "What the fuck, man?" So he goes, "What are you going to do tomorrow?" And I was like, "I guess I'm going to go try to kill that bear." And he's like, "Fucking A."
Dude, I like how like you're doing the accent, and then like as you went, it also turned Scottish.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun, dude. It's hilarious. I mean, they almost sound Irish, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it is funny, but
Yeah. Well, you start to get that like Canadian, but also like that like backcountry Canadian, like out in the bush. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the way they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, they're bush people, you know what I mean? Like where I was, and some of the coolest people, like it was awesome to meet them. And, I mean, now we're like buddies, we text back and forth and stuff. I got to tell you this funny one. So our guide, like the head guide, this kid, Adam, so this guy's a rock star, you know what I mean?
Right.
Now we're talking small town in Nipigon. I mean, there's not a lot to do, but there's like a baseball league. It's actually softball, but they call it baseball.
Right.
And I don't know if that's normal or not, but anyways, they call it baseball, but it is softball. And so there's like a baseball league, and then they have like fishing leagues. Like they have all these like intramural type sports in the town.
Right.
And everybody who's got a pulse and can still run and swing bats and rods, they all participate. It's just a blast, right?
Right.
So one night, the gal that was cooking for us dinner, she made this Saskatoon cheesecake, homemade.
Nice.
So good.
Hell
oh
yeah.
my God, so good. Saskatoon blows blueberry out of the planet.
Nice.
And so I ate like 2 slices, and then she yells at him. She's like, "Adam, we got the Saskatoon pie like in the kitchen. You better hurry up and get some, or there's not going to be any left." And he's like, "Damn it, Gail, I told you I'm training. I can't be eating that stuff when I'm training." And we're all like, "Training for what?"
Right.
He's talking like he's training for like a fight or something. He's like UFC fighter. He's got a fight coming up.
Right.
And this cat's like 130 pounds soaking wet.
Nice.
He's wiry.
I'm training.
But it was just, constant stitches, man. Dude was a riot.
That's awesome, dude. So, well, I'm glad you had a good time we were there. I'm hoping when you go back, you get a bear.
Yeah.
But you did have to come back if at minimum, like today you have a birthday party. That's going on right now. So is the wife's birthday today, or was it?
Yeah, no, it's today.
It's crazy,
it's the first time I've been home on her birthday in 5 years. Well, I guess technically 6. 3 years in which I was in Kentucky for Velvet Opener,
Right.
and then 2 years I was in Montana for Antelope.
Right. And
So
my daughter's birthday is today. So
it's nuts.
yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy.
we did we did sushi dinner tonight, which was
Oh, that's good.
yeah, which was pretty good. And then on the way home I saw some deer, and my wife didn't want me to tell this story, but I thought it was kind of funny. And so I got excited just at the sight of deer, and it's getting up on deer
Yeah,
season, here. I'm like, for me, I'm like 3 weeks away as at the time that we're recording this, and probably closer by the time this releases. But
sure.
I saw a deer, just a doe, in like the neighbor's yard, and so I stopped and I rolled the window down and I'm watching it, and it looked at me, and so I gave it a little bah, and my wife just kind of looks at me, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And then I attempted to snort wheeze at it, and I spit all over my wife. I basically snort wheezed all
Oh
over my
no.
wife, yeah, which was like a major fail. She was not happy. She was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's a snort wheeze, babe." I was like, "I'm just trying to like speak its language," and she was like, "Whatever it was gross." Parked the car, put the car in the garage, and let me out. So that was the end of the birthday dinner for my daughter. It ended with a spittle snort wheeze all over my wife.
Spitting on your wife. Oh,
Yeah,
that's funny, dude.
yeah, it's good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it's we went out and got some Thai food
Nice.
dinner tonight. It's just, carry out
Yeah.
the equivalent of Chinese.
Right.
Um, but like I'm teasing my wife, because I'm like, babe, I'm home on your birthday and you got Thai food. I'm like, damn, spoiled.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Spoiled.
Hey, do you know what I'll be doing for my wife's birthday
What's
this year?
that?
I'll be hanging out with you in Iowa.
Oh,
Bam.
is that when you're gonna be here?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I've missed
Oh,
like she makes fun of me because she's like, you spend my birthday every year, usually camping with another man every year.
you're
So
like, hey, shouldn't have been born during the rut, babe.
that's what I'm saying, man. I was like, your parents planned that poorly. I was like, I don't have any recourse for you,
You're like, obviously your dad's not a hunter.
right? Or he's not into bow hunting or something, because this
Yep.
is it's just not right. Now the bummer is I do have a wedding to go to in October, which I was like, who the hell gets married in October? And I was like, it's bullshit.
Yeah. October and November. It's a hard no for me, Doug.
Yeah, I was like, technically they're your friends, right?
Yeah.
I was like, so if I don't go, I was like, they can be mad at me. I was like, they'll still be your friend. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I
let's
was like,
let's flow chart this out.
yeah,
If
yeah,
I don't show, but you do,
right. It's like if
well,
the
good.
right if the result is I just can't be around when they come over, I can live with that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I was like, it's okay. We can deal with it.
Yeah. It's like that's a win-win,
Yeah, I'm like, like actually, it might work out all the way around in my favor. I was like, as I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure what kind of decision I really have to make when it comes down to it. But
That reminds me when I first started dating my wife, she had a girlfriend and they were inseparable.
mhm.
They did everything together every day, texted every day, all that kind of stuff. Wait, no, we didn't have texting then.
No, no,
No, take that back.
they
They talked on the phone every day.
exactly, yeah,
And anyways, we started dating, and the friend hated me. I mean, like when we were together, she's like, "Oh, this is John. Oh, so, hey, good seeing you." And then Kelly would like turn her head, and she would just like look at me and like with this go to hell look. And I'm like, "What the heck? Did you see that?" She's like, "Oh, you're making that up." I'm like, "No, like she genuinely hates me."
right,
But I was taking her time away from her friend. They don't even speak anymore.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's like you can always tell when someone doesn't like you or they're lying because their voice goes up when they see you. It's like if I ever come up to you and I'm like, "Oh, hey, John, how's it going?" and my voice gets
Yeah,
all high, all of a sudden it's like,
right.
yeah, that's like at that point we're no longer friends.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
right.
that's the litmus test right there. Like the frequency of your voice, does it
Mhm.
change? But at this point, we should probably dive into some type of deer hunting stuff, since this is some type
Yeah.
of deer hunting podcast,
It's a
and that
deer
is
hunting podcast.
that's right. So, for everyone out there listening, John and I every year do a brief kind of goals, hopes, dreams, aspirations for the season, what plans we have for the year, any tactics that we're changing up or strategy that we're going to implement this year. Because at this point, we've done our preseason scouting, and some of it, the off-season scouting, John and I actually got to do together this year while I was in Iowa. And then we make our plans, watch trail cameras, glass some fields, do all those things. And then we're kind of at this point of the year where all the puzzle pieces, you have the puzzle pieces you're going to have heading into the season. And then it's, during the season, it's about reading sign and adapting as you go. But your game plan at this point should be kind of formulated and be somewhat flexible, but you should have an idea of what the plans are. So that's what we're going to do today, is just kind of walk through those. And John, I know you've already kind of started hunting. You've had a couple trips and so forth, but I want to just kind of start first with what states we're going to plan to hunt whitetails this year. So what's on your itinerary for the whitetail season this year?
So tomorrow, I drive down to Kentucky. I got to go down to Whitetail Heaven Outfitters. I'm doing a photo shoot with those guys for their velvet opener, but I don't think it's going to be velvet opener this year. I think everything's going to be hardhorn by the time the season opens on the 7th. But
yeah.
I told them, jokingly, I'm like, yeah, I might bring my bow. And they're like, well, why not? And I'm like, well, because I'm there to work and do photos. And they're like, you can do both. So
nice.
I'm taking my bow and a stand and an Ozonics unit, my camera and camo, just in case, the sheer possibility that I get to sneak away for a couple hours and go sit in a stand, because they have a ton of farms that, like, say the guides may hunt. Because one thing that they do that's on the up and up, and just to kind of throw a little defense for my boy Tevis, he catches a lot of riffraff on Facebook and whatnot, but they do not let their guides hunt the same property that the hunters hunt.
Right.
That's a rarity.
Right. And you and I have talked about this offline before, just about, we have some other buddies that have worked at other outfitters and some of them that we just hear about, right? Just from going to trade shows and stuff like that. So like, whenever you're saying that it's a rarity, it's like, there's plenty of folks out there that will say, yeah, we don't hunt our farms. But then, like, all of a sudden the son of the dude who owns the outfitter killed the biggest deer on the lease properties, or on
exactly.
It's a little fishy. But
go
ahead.
So some of the guides, they've got their own properties and stuff like that. So I might try to jump on one of those or something, and it's literally going to be going in blind. I'll just probably pack in and throw up a stand and see what happens, and no real high hopes.
Right.
But why not? And now going back to Kentucky and actually hunting officially in Kentucky will happen at some point this year. I don't know when. It's either going to be October or December. I don't know which, but
how's the late season there?
If you've got food, it's like any place else, like there's some good stuff with food, and Whitetail Heaven, they've got plenty of food places, but I have that other farm over in Bracken County that I turkey hunt. So I saw a really nice buck there last year.
Oh, dude, you saw a hammer there last year.
Yeah, the second day of the season, and after ATA. So when I left ATA, a mutual friend of ours, Billy C, was carpooling with me, and I was like, hey, I'm not ready to leave Kentucky. I'm going to go sit in a stand one last night. And we had about a 150 coming right at us, 400 yards, 300 yards, 200 yards, 100 yards. At that point, I picked up my bow and I'm like, this is going to happen. And then all 17 deer in the field look into this draw, and a coyote busts them and clears the field on us. But, wish I could kill that daggone wily coyote.
Right.
But yeah, no, dude, just Iowa for the most part. Like, and, we've talked about this in the past, like what, goals are and how we want to, go with the season. This is the first year in my life that I'm not tied down to a 9 to 5 in the deer season. So I keep saying I want to be more aggressive. Because I used to be an aggressive hunter. I keep saying I want to get back to being more aggressive. I want to be more aggressive. So this year I'm going to be more aggressive because I have no reason not to.
Right. Yeah. Because you'll have the time. Because you and I have talked about this online, offline, with buddies. Just you and I, and a lot of the guys that we that hunt aggressively, and like guys who come to mind are like, I know we mention them all the time, but Cody, right?
Yep.
Hunting public guys are pretty aggressive, right? They're hunting bedded deer and stuff. It's a little bit of a luxury, right? Because they can hunt every day. You know what I mean? So you bump a deer, and today you can go either find that deer or find new deer tomorrow, because you have tomorrow, right? Where for you in the past, and still me currently, I would like to hunt more aggressive, but I also am very aware of like what type of properties I'm hunting and what the possibility of me being able to go find another deer or more mature deer on that same piece or on a different piece based on the amount of time that I have as a working stiff.
Yep.
So it's one of those kind of fine balancing acts that you have to pull off. But man, I'm stoked for you to have the whole season. I mean, I know you got some photo work and stuff going on that's going to cut into a
Yep.
little bit of the time that you have some travel going on. But I know when prime time hits, I know you were like, the ringer is off, the phone is dead, and I will be in a tree
Yeah.
stand.
Yeah. I mean, October 15th to Thanksgiving.
Nice.
I'm doing everything in my power to keep that open. Um, if I have a photo gig, like I'm gonna try to limit it to 1 or 2 day gigs,
Right.
but no like week long gigs.
Right.
Unless somebody listening out there wants to pay full retail day rate, then call me. Holler at your boy.
Holla, holla, holla. Nice. For me, man, I mean, we won't belabor the states. For me, it's Pennsylvania.
Yep.
It's Iowa for sure. Those two are definitely happening, of course.
That's a
And
big one.
that is a big one. Like, and I'm just like, I'm super jonesing for it in the worst way. But outside of that, it's like, depending on what happens, in PA and how quickly anything might materialize here, it's like, I may try to slip away and do some, long weekends in Ohio, but I'm not going to do that unless I have a tag filled here. Just because I do have some decent deer around here that I've managed to get on a couple of these private pieces, or I'm sorry, on a couple of these public pieces, that I'm pretty stoked about. That I feel really good about my chances on a couple different pieces. So I don't want to cheat that necessarily, but the other thing I want to ask you about is just, I know you're going to be prioritizing and spending a lot of time in Iowa this year, of course, and the Kentucky trip's going to happen at some point, whether it's October or December. But as far as like any deer, or is there anything that's caught your eye that you're kind of, working toward as far as like a particular deer? It's like, okay, this guy I've seen for a year or two, or this guy I've seen, the past however many weeks, and I know when he transitions to this area. Any targets per se?
No.
No.
I just last night, and while we're talking, I'm sitting here like getting ready to pour bleach all in my ankles. Last night I went on a quick card pull at like 9:30, 10
Chiggers?
p.m. And oh hell yeah.
Dude.
And it's the worst, man. Right at the 1st of September here. It's awful. But I went and did a card pull last night on the lease, and my food plot's looking really good, and that's a positive.
Right.
And there's one buck that was like, I'd like to see him on the hoof, but no definites like, oh boy. That big tall brow buck, I haven't seen him in a couple months.
Dude, that guy was a freak too.
Oh, I know.
Dude, his brow tines were probably almost 2 foot tall. His brow tines were, like, for people out there listening, his brow tines, and this is no lie, were even with the top of his rack.
Yeah,
he's not even joking.
And I would guesstimate his G2s to be like 14 inches.
Yep.
And his brow tines were level with the G2s, so that puts them at 15, 16.
Yeah.
Just a freak. And he came through one night with a buddy, and the buddy is not as tall, but he's thicker. He's got more mass. So they came through there once. That's, like Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber. Mm-hmm. So you're saying there's a chance. Right. So that's good enough for me. I know that he's in the area and he's a deer that I might have a shot at. I've got cameras all over that farm and I haven't picked him up. So that tells me he's not local, just something brought him into the area that night. So he's not living on me, but maybe when it's hard horse season, maybe he'll transition to me,
right?
Frequent me a little bit more. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's definitely the deer that I've I guess I lied. I guess, I do have my sights set on that deer, but, man, I tell you, like here in my part of Iowa, seeing a deer in velvet, I hardly ever see him. Yeah, I hardly ever see him. I mean, the buck I killed last year, I killed him a mile down the road from where I was getting trail camera pictures of him.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just.
Go ahead.
No, and it's just, and I never had trail camera pictures of him before I killed him. You know what I mean? On that lease. So it's kind of funky, but,
Right.
yes, I don't get my heart set too hard to be broken
Right.
around here.
Right. Now, have you done any card pulls? Now, selfishly, I'm going to ask this question on any of the public.
I haven't. I'm letting them soak.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I'm letting those soak. And because I was thinking about doing a card pull when I came home for this 48 hours. And then I remembered how bad the chiggers are right now. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wait till I come back from Ontario. So
Right.
I'm going to do a card pull probably around the 20th or 21st.
Okay.
That's when I'll swap out cards. And then I'm actually taking 2 more cameras out there. So there'll be a total of 4 soaking in the vicinity of where we found that match set.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
Yeah. Oh, and I meant to tell you this. I actually was riding around with my buddies at Old Barn Taxidermy, and they showed me a piece of public that notoriously produces a big buck every year.
Really?
Yep. And it's a small, little, skinny little section of public, and people just overlook it because they're like, it's only 100 yards wide.
Right.
But it's like a mile and a half long.
Is it? So if we were leaving your house, your old house, right,
Yep.
and turning out of your driveway, would we be making a right to go to that public?
Left.
A left. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there was a different piece I was eyeballing that was actually down close to the river. That was actually just a small strip that was like, I don't know. I don't remember if it was corn or if it was beans in a field that kind of butted up this small little like chunk that was part of the public, but it was just on the other side of the road bordering the river.
Yeah.
And that kind of interested me just because of a pile of food there close to the river, you know.
I'll get you a couple of street names.
Okay.
So you can start looking at it. And I'm going to take a camera over there as well
Nice.
towards the end of September and see just I'm the first big heavy duty trail that I find that
just slap it on there, see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, because if you can at least get some inventory, right, you can start to look at the timestamp and start to, you know, if it's October, once November happens, you know, it's like then it becomes a little bit of a shit show as far as like trying to figure out where they're going and why they're going, where they're going, and so forth. But if you can get some stuff in early October, might be enough time to kind of figure out where the one might be kind of spending his evening hours, you know, timestamp him, walking back, you know, however far away that he might be for his bed.
Exactly.
Type of thing. But yeah, man, that's awesome. For me, dude, I actually just went and did a card pool as we're sitting here talking. I did yesterday because I finally got a freaking rainstorm that I've been waiting for weeks on a day off, and I finally got it. So I ran out and checked cameras on a couple different public pieces. And dude, like you remember that big rub I found I guess this spring whenever I was scouting, I showed it to you and I was like, man, it's like the biggest rub I think I've ever found around here. And I was like, there has to be a big deer that makes it. And I did have a big deer on camera at the end of June, was kind of stoked about that. And then yet another one showed up in this same area, and he is cruising back to bed. Like I'm getting him on camera right around 6:30 a.m. And every month he's coming back to bed later and later and later. And so that tells me like I'm pretty close to his bed at this point. Like I would guess probably no more than 200 yards away max from his bed if he's passing through at that time of the morning coming back to bed. And so I'm hoping he continues to make that same mistake, if you will. And then kind of I checked out, I don't know if people out there ever use this, but I use Deer Lab every now and then to kind of look at wind, especially if there's a deer that I really like, you know, or that I would like to try to go after in a particular area. I'll use that to kind of figure out what winds he predominantly likes to travel on when he's traveling a certain direction and stuff like that. And this fellow likes a north wind, which is like, it's a perfect wind basically for me to set up on and for him to feel good, you know? So, and the access coming in is pretty bulletproof for me to get in. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And then there's another public piece that I threw a wing and a prayer at, dude. I just happened, I saw it. I was close to it one day. I had an extra camera in my bag. And so I ended up just stopping, jumping in. It's got some food on it, like the state puts on it. And so I literally just walked in the timber a little ways and I was like, you know what? It's kind of what you said, man. I was like, the first good trail I find, I was like, I'm just going to hang a camera on it and see what happens. And went in, hung a camera on it, and went and checked it this past weekend, and like 2 shooters on it. Like not Iowa caliber shooters, but probably, Pope and young deer. You know what I mean? So for this area on public, that's a really good deer, so there's that one. And there's one other one that I found the sheds too this past year that we have on camera pretty frequently too. So there's a couple deer around, and those are kind of my plans, dude. I've yet to get pictures in the swamp of any of the deer from last year because I think it's haunted. I think the swamp is haunted. Every camera I've put in there so far,
it disappears.
Well, it might as well, because I hang it and like I place it I don't know, man. I place it in like a spot and I'm like, I'm good. I come back. The first one I put in there, I left soak for like a month. I come back and it burned out the batteries in 3 days, where it did nothing but capture images of leaves like blowing. Dude, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I was
aliens.
like, you know what? Let me take this camera out, check the sensor on it when I get it home, and let me put a fresh one out and just, set it up. And I was like, I'm even going to move it into a different spot to where maybe I won't get as many false triggers. Put that up. And so since I got rain this week, I usually don't go back after a week of hanging it, but I wanted to go back and just check, right, to make sure it was good. Same thing, like nothing but leaf pictures, and like the camera's working fine. It's just like wherever I'm placing it, I'm just getting a pile of false triggers. And this was that spot that I had that deer last year that was probably pressing 150 inches. So I'm like super bummed that I've got dick for pictures from this place.
Dang.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is I know there's decent deer in there. It's just a matter of like this year I was really hoping to like figure out some type of early season pattern, because the season opens early enough I can probably get on a bed to food thing. But it's just not playing out for me. So, but those are kind of my plans, man. I pulled the cards at my dad's place, one good shooter on that, but I don't know that I'll even make it back there because I got some really nice deer around here to hunt, and that's probably where I'm going to spend most of my time. A couple, swamp donkey bruisers here on the East Coast. So, that's kind of the plan, man. So I know that, we talked a little bit about tactics in the last one, but we were saving it kind of for this, session of our plans, hopes, and dreams, etc. But, thinking back on last year and scouting you've done this year and stuff like that, is there anything new that you're going to try this year, or is there anything that you're going to kind of switch up from last year that you're like, you know what, this probably didn't work out so well for me last year, so I'm going to try it this way?
That's a good question. So because my time is the way it is, the way it's going to work out this year, theoretically, I'm probably going to jump out October 1st, October 2nd. See if I've got anything early season coming to that plot. I mean, that's, a whole nother month away.
Right.
So I'll probably jump out, take a few stabs on that plot, some evening sits. And if I don't see anything, that's good enough, whatever, I'll back out. And then probably won't even think about hunting until middle October. And then just basically wait for cold fronts and hunt. I mean, even if it's a 5-10 degree drop, whatever, I'll jump out in some evenings and do some evening sits on cold fronts. And then once we get to that, like October 26th, 27th, then I start getting a little frisky.
Right.
And really, 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 watching that weather and barometric pressure. But come Halloween through the 15th, I'm an everyday person.
Nice.
Just wherever I got to go, wherever I got to be. I got a phone call today from a cooler company that I work with, is in the blind business, hard-sided blinds.
Nice.
And they're sending me a hard-sided blind, and I've got a spot on the backs. It's on the far end of my food plot. It's notorious for swirling winds, and I never can get to that backside because of it. And ozonics is great, and I put ozonics 9 times out of 10 helps me. But this is one of those spots where it's just so swirling. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I mean, you'd have to have multiple units running different directions and stuff like that. Right. And, we've all seen those spots where it's the winds are so swirling so bad. You're just like, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Where you just completely avoid it. And that's always where the deer are at.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, there's a reason why we either see deer or we get busted by deer. two things are going to happen on swirling winds. And it's because that's where they feel safe too. So,
Right.
anyways, I'm kind of excited that I can kind of hunt that. So that might be my early season, when it's still a little warmer, like
Right.
that might be a place I might jump to. But it'll definitely be, that like early January when it's just nasty, brutal cold in Iowa.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I was
When it's
actually,
negative 15, that's where I'll be.
yeah, right. In the warm blind, not a bad spot to be.
Yep.
Man, I think I think my change up this year is a couple, and I was actually jotting notes as you were talking because I was just kind of thinking about it. And I've typically not been much of a morning person in October for
Mm-hmm.
obvious reasons, right? It's really hard to beat a deer back to bed, right?
Yep.
But this year, as you and I both got to spend some time with Cody or whatever and talking hunting with him, and even just via text message and stuff outside of like the podcast and stuff. I mean, that dude makes hay in the mornings in October often. You know what I mean? And he'll tell you.
There's some crazy stat that he told me one time. It was like 65% of his bucks that are over 140 have been killed in the morning before October 20th.
That's crazy, man. So I'm gonna not be stubborn, and I'm gonna like be a little bit adaptable here. And what my rule of thumb was, kind of what my takeaway was from all the conversations I've had with him and other folks who hunt similarly, is that if you've got good intel and you've got a good idea on a deer, and he's killable in the morning, don't try to kill him in an evening. Just go kill him when he's letting you. And
Yep.
so that is one of my things this year, especially this one deer that I have that I'm watching. And like I've said in the past, it's like I don't try to hunt like a specific deer. I try to hunt a terrain feature where I know good deer are going to use. And where this one big deer is showing up, there's three other ones that I would be happy to shoot that are using the same terrain feature. You know what I mean? So I'm not putting all my eggs in that one basket necessarily, but he is the one that I would like to see first if we were, if we were choosing. And these deer are all kind of coming through in the morning. And this big deer in particular is coming through in the morning right at gray light when I could get a shot opportunity. And it's not so early that I couldn't get in and beat him back to bed. And so that's one of those instances where I think, a morning hunt in those right situations, I need to try this year and be a little bit more aggressive in that regard. I think the other thing I need to be more diligent about this year, and part of it is, another point that I'll make here in a second, but it's just with my access. It's still one of those things that I sometimes struggle with. And part of it's because of some of the parcel sizes that I'm hunting, and that it's around suburban areas where there's small private lots around it of homes and stuff like that, where there's only one way in and one way out, and so just being more diligent, like maybe I don't hunt mornings in the swamp because the access sucks. Maybe I wait till like 10 o'clock when there's a lot of road traffic to use the cover sound to get in when they're already back to bed, and hunt them in their midday movement. Cause dude, they're comfortable in there. And I got tons of midday movement pictures last year from mature deer. So that's another thing that I'm trying to, I think, pay attention to this year. And then this year, which leads to the access piece, is that I was diligent this year, and I challenged myself this past off season to scout more in the off season and find more suitable parcels to hunt, public land parcels to hunt. So I wasn't kind of beholden to one particular location. And so what this will let me do is I have a couple burner places where I don't have a bunch of good deer that I can hunt in this, in the morning before I go to work. And I'm really looking to fill doe tags, but I also have a bunch of other parcels to where now I can truly hunt particular parcels in areas where I know I have good deer, in setups where I know I should be successful, and only hunt them whenever I'm getting the right wind to hunt them. Which means in the past I was having to hunt iffy winds if I wanted to go hunt, because like we were talking earlier, man, it's like I'm a working dude, a 9 to 5, or if I only have Saturday to hunt and the wind's wrong for a particular location, but that's the only location I have, it's like either hunt or don't hunt. A lot of times I would make the bad choice and not to go hunt because I just want to get out. You know what I mean? And so I've done that plenty of times, which I knew full well going into it was wrong, but I was preferring to go hunt than sit at home. So this year I was like, you know what? I need multiple locations to hunt, so I have somewhere to hunt on any wind condition. And that way I can prioritize hunting the right spots with the right wind conditions to have an opportunity at a good deer. And so that's kind of where I'm at this year. Those were like the plans that I made. And the thing is man, when people think about deer hunting, people say it to me at work all the time. They're like, man, it's a lot more involved than I thought it was. And, they don't hunt. And I'm like, if you want to if you want to put yourself in a good position, it is involved. It's like, because this plan that I'm trying to lay out for this year started last year, January, or like February 1st, when the season ended January 29th or 30th, right? So it started like the day of the season ended. It was like, here's the plan I need to kind of put in place. So next year I have these things available to me, so I'm not screwing myself over and over again. So that's kind of those are the things I'm changing this year, man. So what do you think?
I like it. No, I mean, it's, whenever you were talking about hunting mornings and that buck being there, like, why not? If he's there in the morning, go kill him in the morning. It reminds me having so many conversations with, my old business partner, Todd Prignitz.
Yeah.
There'd be times where, I'm like, hey, I got this buck showing up at like 7:30 in the morning. He's like, what time's it daylight? And I'm like, 7. And he's like, so what's your plan? I'm like, oh, I think I can set up on him this afternoon. And he's like, if you know where he is, go kill him.
Right.
Like, that's the hardest part, is knowing where he's at. You got a picture of him at 7:01 and a picture of him at 7:09. You know where he's going. Set up in between him or later,
Yep.
and go kill him. Like, what are you waiting on? Yep. And so from like 2013, 2014, 2015, I was super, super aggressive. And then, I don't know, I got some stupid idea in my head when I moved to Iowa. I'm like, oh, I'm in Iowa now. I got to hunt smart and, take my little stabs into the timber and sneak in and go kill these giant bucks. They're not any different. They're still whitetails,
yep.
And I basically just kind of got off my game plan for a couple of years. And some of it was also because of scheduling. I'm like, well, I don't have as many days to hunt, so I kind of got to strategically, but that's when I should have really been more aggressive.
Right. I was just going to say, man, like, going to Iowa, it's because of just the lack of pressure that the state has just in generally speaking. Mm-hmm. I would say, man, like, fucking go for broke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, look, people joke there's a 180 around every tree, and you and I both know that that's not true, but it is a target-rich environment, right? So
sure,
if you blew a chance on one good deer, you would have a very good chance you would see another good deer before the year was over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think in Iowa, as a general rule, per 5-mile block or whatever, mm-hmm. there is probably more mature deer in that 5-mile block than a lot of other places.
Yeah, 100%.
But because there's not as many people and they don't get as much intrusion, they are definitely less tolerable to intrusion.
Right.
It's kind of like, my mom always jokes with me. She's like, oh, the elusive whitetail. She's like, during the month of November, I find like 100 on the road dead. Couldn't avoid that, 4,000-pound vehicle driving down the road. I'm like, yeah, but that's on the road. Like, you go into their world, into their timber. I'm like, it's no different. Like, you walk in your house and you're like, wait a second.
Weird dude sitting on your couch.
Yeah. Or like, you're like, wait a second. I did not leave my shoes on that side of the bed. I left them on the other side of the bed. It's like those little things like that. Like they notice more, and
yeah.
Same thing with us. Like if we lived in the woods,
yeah,
we would probably notice a twig break here, a twig break there that wasn't there the day before. But,
for sure.
So, there's that aspect of it. But they travel. And Iowa's very diverse, as far as the state goes. I mean, excuse me, you don't have to go very far north and you're hunting a lot more fingers.
Yeah.
Whereas down by me, it's big blocks of timber.
Yep.
Big blocks of timber, as you've seen in Shimmick.
Yep.
So I'm definitely going to be a lot more aggressive this year. I'm going to take full advantage of my newfound vagabond status and border jumper,
right.
Esquire.
Right.
So yeah, I'm going to be a lot more aggressive this year and, not just flat out stupid, but I'm going to bust ass this year.
Yeah. I hear you, man.
Definitely bust ass.
That's kind of my thing too, man. I like the vagabond buck. Like, I hope you kill a vagabond buck this year. And my goal is to try to kill a hobo buck, because I got a couple pieces that I have that are along train tracks that I'm using. That's actually one of my big things this year is I have train track access to a couple pieces, which is solid. Dude, it's awesome. Like it's so stealth, and like the one spot, it's like I can slip right up in because like where I want to hunt it is right off the train tracks. Because there's
You
like,
know what you need? You need one of those manual carts that's like the seesaw handle, you
dude,
know? You need one of those to get in and out.
yeah.
That'd be
Until I
rad.
meet the train the other way, which it happened to me the last time when I was walking out after checking cameras. I was like the train was on its way, and I had to like deke off into the woods, which is a little dicey, but it was yeah, and I was just imagining. I was like, so I kill a deer in here. I was like, how the hell do I get this thing out? What happens when the train's coming in the opposite way as I'm trying to drag this deer out?
If you kill a buck off the train tracks after that experience, you have to call the buck the Ray Brower buck.
The Ray Brower, dude, we can call it the Ray Brower buck. That's cool. We'll do that. But the one other big thing I have going on, and I know I talked to you about it, and I'll be hitting you more often like than
Mhm.
not this year, is you've inspired me yet again to do stupid shit, which is which is to get the camera back out and actually got some new camera stuff and film all my hunts this year. So thanks for that kick in the groin. Appreciate
If I had a sound bite right now, I would pull Gene Wilder from Willy Wonka when he's like, "No, please stop."
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, dude, I love video and hunts. Like I've said it before, and it's I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world until I did it the first time, and it was so cool to be able to just rewatch the hunt. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like as it happened, it was super awesome, and I enjoy sharing the stories, and I like seeing other people's stories, and
Yep.
I'm a visual person, you know. But it adds a whole nother challenge. I
Yeah.
mean, it really does.
It does.
Self-filming your deal is very, very, very tough. I mean, I've done it, a couple times,
Yeah. Just a
and
couple.
I've had it backfire on me a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
the what really kind of set it off for me was coming to Iowa. You know what I mean? It's just that,
yeah.
I only get to do that once every 4 years, let's say, you know what I mean, going
Oh
forward.
yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, if I do happen to, put an arrow in a good deer, this year, it's like I'd like to try to get it on film.
For sure.
I'll be honest with you. It's like I'm not going to pull the shot if I don't have the deer in frame. Like that's not going to happen.
Right.
But I talked
You
about
say that now.
Well, you have full right, and I'll say it here. If I miss an opportunity on a big deer in Iowa because I tried to move my camera, you have the right to beat the piss out of me whenever we talk that night. So
Hey, I 2 years ago, self-filming, I had a big buck, really, really big buck. And it was one of those seasons where just nothing seemed to go right. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, I remember that season, dude. That was
Yep.
brutal.
Yeah. And just nothing was working my way. And I went to reach for the camera. The deer busted me. I waited 30 seconds. He calmed down, looked away. I went to reach for the camera again. He busted me a second time. And like he saw movement, but didn't know what I was or if I was anything. He just saw some movement in the tree.
Right.
And I made the decision at that point. I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm in the business of filming my hunts. I'm not going to film this hunt.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill this deer. I'm going to be a hunter, and then I'll film the recovery. But for this moment, I'm not a videographer. I'm a hunter, and I made that decision, and I ended up pulling the shot a little bit. Still think it should have been a fatal shot, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, I didn't recover that buck. And looking back on it, I'm like, had I not reached for the camera, if I just would have shot that buck, would my nerves have been a little more calm? Or
Right.
what if I had waited a little longer, got the camera on him, settled down, and then drew on him, taken the extra time, would that have changed anything? I don't know, but it definitely adds an element to it. But man, it's so cool when you can self-film your own kill. It's a big accomplishment, I think. I mean, it just kind of adds to it. But like you said, coming to Iowa first time, and it being a once in 4 year deal,
Yeah.
it would be neat because I mean I'll be filming everything and you're filming everything, and then there could be one little badass little episode to put together.
That's right, dude. It's for me too, it's like, and you and I talked about this. It's like I went with a 4K camcorder, right?
Mhm.
Because we talked about this, where it's like I'm not a videographer, photographer guy, right? So for me, it was more about, can I leave it wide angle whenever see a deer approaching that I might want to shoot, and just know that it's in frame because I have the camera panned out. And then because it's 4K, I can bring it in post to get, a closer up, visual of the shot. Like, so that was really my approach, was like, get a good, like, affordable 4K, camcorder, and get a, GoPro 4K camera to use. That way everything is able to be brought in closer range without degrading the quality of it. So I can focus on hunting and not necessarily being a camera person. So that was kind of my solve for it. The other thing too is, like, I wanted to start filming again because whenever I was, I know you're used to it, but for me, it was adding something new whenever I was hunting out of a tree stand and stuff. And now with the saddle being, and I've lightened my gear so much, and I'm so much more streamlined, taking that little camcorder in and stuff like that really didn't, it's 2 pounds, right? So it wasn't a big deal for me to start to add a few of these things because it doesn't add a whole lot to what I'm managing already. Because what I'm using is not bulky and super light and stuff like that. So it wasn't like it was a burden. A little bit more setup time in the tree, of course. Yes. But not terrible. So it was one of those things where I was willing to make the trade-off. So going to do some filming, man. But, so last question for you, man, and I'll let you get out of here because I know you got some birthday partying to do. But what's success look like this year for one Johnny Utah Mulligan?
Success for me. Success for me is, the cheesy answer is another season of learning. Continue to learn and continue to grow and hone skills and get better at reading sign and reacting to sign and, that kind of stuff. Keep my scent control in check. But I'll say it right now. My goal this year is $2.
Yep.
That's what I want to do. I haven't done it since 2015. It's the last time I shot $2 in one season. Mm-hmm. So that's my goal for this year, is shoot $2, one on private, one on public.
Nice. Yeah. I think my goal this year is, I think, the same as yours, man. Mine is a little bit different. Mine's $2. It's kill one of these, public land bucks in Pennsylvania. That is a goal of mine. Public land in PA is hard to hunt, and I got a couple good deer, and I would love nothing more than to wrap a tag around one of them before I come out your way. And then, and you asked me about this the last podcast, but I'd like to kill a mature deer in Iowa.
Sure.
I don't have like an age. I don't have a score in mind of what I would like to kill per se. Nope. I'd like to kill a 4.5-year-old deer, and if that's the case, then he probably would be in the 140s, I would imagine. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of ish, 140, 145, whatever the case is. Like, that's kind of what I'm looking for is that. Yep. And that's my goal. Aside from that is just to spend two weeks with you, man, hunting Iowa, hanging out, dude. You know what I mean? Yeah. Swapping stories. We're going to be doing podcasts very regularly. So I'll just let everyone know now. Last year, whenever I went on my rut trip last year, I did a podcast almost every day. It was at least every other day on days that I got back to camp really, really late. So you can probably imagine that there's going to be a podcast put out. If I'm out there for 14 days, there'll be at least 7, if not probably close to 9 episodes that'll come out. That John and I will be, knocking out and kind of keeping everyone up to date as to what's going on. Which I'm looking forward to that, because those are always kind of fun episodes to put out. And other than that, man, just hanging out with you and your family. I'm gonna be vagabonding on your couch for a couple of nights whenever I have a gap in my accommodations. So appreciate you and the fam putting up with me for a couple of days the one weekend. But
hey, no problem. I've slept on that couch a few times myself. It's not bad.
Did you get in trouble? Did you got in a little trouble?
Here and there.
Well, speaking of, man, I don't want you to get in trouble on the wife's birthday, so I'm gonna let you get going, brother. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to y'all soon. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank you all for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Would be super appreciative if you would be able to do those 2 things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcap Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
my heels. Makes me proud, makes me steal. I could show you through the door. I ain't welcome anymore. And long time coming, if it all. It takes a special knowing to color for. Damaged heads, broken letters. Rationalize yourself in numbers, but I